Part 51. My green plums are super sweet. Author, Luke Hixie. Chapter 501. Chapter 501 Can't marry Yezikin. The patient is still conscious and family members can go in. Although I haven't finished speaking, I also know that it is the last time. Doctor, don't give up. Please think of another way. Ye Wei was unwilling to just accept his fate. The doctor shook his head. Li Moer was the first to rush in. She burst into tears while standing by the bed. That performance was really touching. Mr. Chiao stood beside the bed, crying. Pei Yuchen is the most sensible one. He has always been very aware of the old lady's condition. Now this situation, there is no way to save her. Miss, now that the matter has come to an end, you should hurry in and see Madam for the last time. Pei Yuchen's words woke her up. Ye Wei no longer pestered the doctor. She went in and knelt directly beside the bed. Grandma. She cried silently, but sincerely. Grandma, I'm back, I'm sorry she came back too late, and even saying a word to her own grandma was a luxury. At this time, Mrs. Jiao's eyelashes trembled slightly. When everyone was crying in sadness, she slowly opened her eyes. Ye Wei stretched out his hand to wipe away the tears from the corner of his eyes, and held Mrs. Jiao's skinny palm with both hands. Grandma, Grandma, you can hold on, right? I am Jiao, I am back to see you, and I will stay with you from now on. Until you recover, okay. Mrs. Jiao opened her mouth and screamed twice. At this time, Li Moer deliberately lowered his head and pretended to cry, for fear that Mrs. Jiao would see her. And Mr. Jiao and Pei Yuchen surrounded her, basically blocking Mrs. Jiao's full realization. Mrs. Jiao's last breath was probably called reflection. Not only did she open her eyes, she could also make sounds. Jo. A character named Jiao, representing her husband and granddaughter. Mr. Jiao and Yu Wei stood in the same place at the same time, allowing Mrs. Jiao to see them all at a glance. Ye Wei forced a smile and said, Grandma, look at me and Grandpa staying by your side. You should get well soon. Mr. Jiao also tried his best to hide his sadness. Honey, you didn't beat me in the chess game last time. I left the chessboard untouched. Jo. Mrs. Jiao spoke up and said some unclear words with difficulty. She stretched out her finger with great effort and pointed at Ye Wei, then at Mr. Jiao, and silently uttered two words. Pei Yuchen explained later, the lady may have meant taking care of. As soon as Pei Yuchen explained, Mrs. Jiao closed her eyes and opened them after a few seconds. She was giving a reaction. Leave. Mrs. Jiao struggled to find words. Ye Wei kept comforting her, Grandma, don't be anxious. If you have anything to say, please speak slowly. Don't be anxious. Mrs. Jiao is most worried about Ye Wei now. Her eyes have been falling on Ye Wei. Leave, leave. Pei Yuchen could roughly understand what Mrs. Jiao meant. Leave. What? Night. Madam, do you mean to ask the young lady to leave the Ye family? Because she told Mrs. Jiao before about the grudges between the Ye family and the Jiao family, and the Ye family had adopted Ye Wei as their adopted daughter, it was understandable that she was worried that Ye Wei would be involved with the Ye family. Mrs. Jiao closed her eyes again and opened them after a few seconds. Everyone knows that Pei Yuchen's translation is correct. Grandma, don't worry about me. When I went to G City, didn't you also say that you wanted to see me grow up? You should get well soon, and we will live together as a family in the future. Mrs. Jiao cried silently and said a few more words. No, Yejia, get married. End of this chapter. My green plums are super sweet. Author, Luke Hixie. Chapter 502. Chapter 502 Mrs. Jiao passes away. Jiao, leave the Ye family. Mrs. Jiao said those words with all her strength. She opened her eyes wide and repeated, "You can't marry Yezikin." "Grandma, what are you talking about?" Ye Wei was completely unprepared for everything. Li Moer, who was lying on the bedside, covered her face and smiled proudly. When Mrs. Jiao had hallucinations and mistook her for Jiao Lian, she often deliberately cried in front of the old woman and complained about how the Ye family bullied her. Mrs. Jiao believed that Ye Wei had suffered many grievances at the Ye family, including that Ye Hantian forced Jiao Lun to marry Yezikin in order to satisfy his own selfish desires. These were all lies made up by Li Moer. But this lie became Mrs. Jiao's heartache. She values her granddaughter so much that she is reluctant to protect her. Even when she is struggling on the verge of death, she keeps saying that she hopes her granddaughter will break free and regain her freedom. But Mrs. Jiao's family affection has become a sharp weapon for Li Moer. Mrs. Jiao struggled to express what she meant but never received a response. Ye Wei was shaking his head. She and Mrs. Jiao were unable to communicate. Mrs. Jiao said which made other people feel uncomfortable when they saw her. She just tried her best to get Ye Wei to agree. Mr. Jiao didn't know the specifics. He didn't want his wife to die in silence before leaving, so he had to urge Ye Wei, Jiao, please promise your grandma quickly. Grandpa, no, you must have misunderstood what grandma meant. Ye Wei made a slight rebuttal, and Mrs. Jiao roared even louder. Pei Yuchen had no choice but to say, "Miss, that's what the madam really means." After Pei Yuchen said this, Mrs. Jiao closed her eyes and opened them after a few seconds. With previous experience, they all knew that Mrs. Jiao's action meant yes. Ye Wei was confused and confused. Old Mrs. Jiao stared at her closely. Mr. Jiao was heartbroken and said, Jiao, no matter what your grandma said, please agree quickly." Ye Wei shook her head. The corners of her mouth were trembling and she couldn't speak. Even Pei Yuchen bowed his head to her, "Miss, please agree to madam's last request." Now everyone is putting pressure on her, as if her failure to agree is a big sin. Ye Wei looked at the tortured old man on the hospital bed, and when he heard her screams, he felt heartbreaking pain. Mr. Jiao shook her arm and asked sadly, "Do you want your grandma to die in peace?" Looking at those cloudy eyes, Ye Wei lowered his head as if he had lost strength, leaned his forehead against the bed, and cried softly, I promise, I promise." Her compromise reached Mrs. Jiao's ears. Mrs. Jiao slowly closed her eyes, and this time, she never woke up. Li Moer cried bitterly at this moment, "Grandma, has gone." She deliberately revealed the truth that Mr. Jiao and others were unwilling to face. When she saw Mrs. Jiao finally closing her eyes on the hospital bed, she really wanted to find a place to laugh out loud immediately. This old woman is really dead. From now on, she can continue to be her Miss Yejia without any worries. She no longer has to pay attention to the news about the old woman. She can be free, and no longer needs to pretend to be mysterious and filial. It makes me happy just thinking about it. Especially Mrs. Jiao's last words before her death, they were exactly what she wanted. Ye Wei promised in person that he would never marry Yezikin, so there would be no possibility for them in the future. Thanks to Zio, Zioxi and Girl's heroic dream for the Children's Day reward, thank you. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. My green plums are super sweet. Author, Lukixi. Chapter 503. Chapter 503. The only person who will leave is Mr. Jiao. Mrs. Jiao's funeral was held in S. Mr. Jiao said that he hoped she would return to her roots. Mr. Jiao was reluctant to destroy his wife's body and found a good place to bury her in a rural area far away from the city. The adopted son from abroad came with his wife and children to pay homage. Old Jiao, who was originally full of energy, suddenly became much older. Pei Yuchen, the most rational person, was still busy doing business in a hurry. It was Mrs. Chiao who left all the inheritance in her name to Ye Weiwei. Mr. Chiao loves his wife, and he naturally feels pity for his wife's granddaughter. Mr. Chiao respects his wife's wishes and has no objections to property matters. The care Mrs. Chiao said to them before she died was actually hoping that they, one old and one young, would take care of each other. Mr. Chiao stood in front of his wife's tombstone and promised to take good care of Ye Weiwei and love her as his own granddaughter. Ye Weiwei also knew that the relationship between the two couples was very good, and she could not be happy with each other. In the end, all her blood relatives who cared about her gradually left. "Grandma, don't worry, from now on, I will be filial to Grandpa. She will transfer the regret of not being able to accompany the old man to Mr. Chiao." Mrs. Chiao's funeral was not completed because she was not a public person. This was something Mr. Chiao knew very well. He said, "Your grandma once said that she hopes to find a place close to mountains and rivers when she is old, a quiet life. Mrs. Chiao will be buried in this peaceful village. The mausoleum has been built and Mrs. Chiao's favorite flowers have been given to her." After worshipping in front of the tomb, Mr. Chiao stood there with a look of nostalgia on his face. "The only knight is by my side silently." A slender figure stood under a big tree 10 meters away. He stared in front of him indifferently, but his eyes actually fell on Ye Weiwei. Pei Yuchen passed by and called out politely, "Master Ye." Yezikin responded with a light hum. "Master Ye, I'm sorry, but the old lady rejects the Ye family, so I can't let you go there to worship." In fact, Yezikin has been not far from them in the past 2 days, but he is from the Ye family, so he couldn't pass Mr. Chiao's test in the first place. If it weren't for Li Moer's behavior in the hospital, he would definitely not have been allowed in. Li Moer was silent at the moment, but she was very upset. If it weren't for the fact that she had to do a full set of performances, she wouldn't want to stand here, and she would feel chilled looking at it. She accidentally looked back and saw that familiar figure, and felt happy. She finally had a reason to leave, and silently turned around and walked towards Yezikin. "Brother Chen, you are here." Li Moer didn't have any sadness on his face when he faced Yezikin. Yezikin looked at Li Moer's rich expression changes indifferently, as if he was looking at a clown. But Li Moer is so thick-skinned. She knew that Yezikin was blocked from outside, and she also knew that Yezikin didn't have much affection for her. But the more this happens, the more she wants to cause trouble for Yezikin and Ye Weiwei. Everyone who knows about the feud between the Ye family and the Chiao family thinks that Mrs. Chiao is hostile to the Ye family, so she does not allow Ye Weiwei and Yezikin to fall in love. Li Moer was about to mention it. "Brother Chen, I know you must be feeling uncomfortable, but Grandma Chiao will not allow you to be with Yi before she dies," and Yi agrees. "There is no way to change this matter. Brother Chen, I think it won't be long before the only one left is with Mr. Chiao." End of this chapter. My green plums are super sweet. Author, Lukixi. Chapter 504. Chapter 504, Deep Feelings. Li Moer, you are getting bolder and bolder. Brother Chen, I'm just telling the truth after all, you are the one who helped me hide the truth. Mrs. Chiao is dead, but Li Moer has caught Yezikin's hand. Yezikin helped cover up the truth about Mrs. Chiao falling from the stairs. If Ye Weiwei knew about it, it would be a good show. In fact, Yezikin himself did not make any mistakes. The only reason is that he cares too much about Ye Weiwei, so he can easily grasp his weaknesses. But Yezikin is not easy to handle either. "Li Moer, where is the nurse named Zhang? I know better than you do." This is his warning to Li Moer. Li Moer couldn't believe it. How could you know? His bribery of a nurse surnamed Zhang to drug the old lady was extremely secretive. How could Yezikin, who was far away in G City, know about it? For a moment, Lemur didn't dare to imagine where Yezikin's strength would extend. Don't think that because the old lady is dead, you can sit back and relax, say, and do what you should, and don't forget that you are responsible for a human life. Yezikin scoffed coldly and turned to leave. Lemur stood under the tree, holding onto the trunk of the tree and straining hard. She only dared to threaten to take advantage of her verbally, but Yezikin truly controlled her destiny. She is not willing to give in. No matter what, we have to separate Yezikin and Yewei. Those two people who have grudges should not be happy together. Lemur's heart has been blinded by jealousy and completely twisted. After handling the funeral of Mrs. Chiao, Mr. Chiao insisted on staying in the countryside to accompany her for a few days. He said, "Your grandma is not used to going to strange places alone. I will stay with her here for a few days to prevent her from being too lonely." Ye Wei listened silently, and truly felt that Mr. Chiao had deep affection for his grandma. Some love is not so vigorous, but it flows slowly and settles in time, turning into eternity. "Grandpa, there are still many things I don't know. Why don't you tell me stories about grandma in the next few days?" The only thing Ye said was that he planned to stay. Good. Mr. Chiao stood there, looking in the direction where Mrs. Chiao was buried. The only thing that left quietly in the night. She turned around and walked to the corner, and suddenly bumped into someone. The man grabbed her wrist, and Ye Wei knew his identity without raising her head. "Brother, why are you here? Come and see you." Ye Wei shook his head, "I'm fine." Yezikin stared at her face with burning eyes, "When will you go back?" Ye Wei gently broke away from his hand and turned his head slightly to avoid it. I won't go back for the time being." "Not going back? Are you ignoring your studies, your plans, and your friends?" "I don't." "Then how long do you plan to stay here?" "When Grandma passed away, she hoped that Grandpa and I would take care of each other. I want to spend more time with him." Mrs. Chiao's death was a huge blow to Mr. Chiao. Ye Wei could only find a way to unblock Mr. Chiao's heart. But these words had another meaning in Yezikin's ears. "Are you going to take care of that so-called grandpa, be his granddaughter and fulfill your filial piety?" "Yes, this is what I promised Grandma." Yezikin's eyes flashed, "You also promised not to marry me, and you have to do it, right?" The things he wanted to hide were revealed unexpectedly. Ye Wei was shocked. "How did you know?" "Today I have a date with my friends to have hot pot on Chinese Valentine's Day and continue to celebrate Children's Day." End of this chapter. My green plums are super sweet. Author, Luke Hixie. Chapter 505. Chapter 505, Only those who love you most will compromise first. "Oh, it seems like you are still planning to hide it from me and then leave me for the last words of your so-called relatives, right?" Yezikin speaks sharply when he is angry. He does not show anger, but his eyes make people fearful. Ye Wei shook his head, "No. That's enough, you've been here for 5 whole days, you should go back and resume your normal life." He didn't want to hear those irrelevant reasons anymore. He just wanted to lock Ye close to him and cut off any possibility that the two of them would be separated. And Yezikin's strength makes Yewei difficult to understand. Grandma was originally the only relative she had left in the world, so of course she would cherish it. Now that Grandma has passed away, is it wrong for her to spend more time with her here? "Brother, I just feel that the old man is too lonely. I will naturally go back in a few days," she explained while shaking her head. Suddenly I heard Mr. Chiao calling someone over there. "Chiao Chiao, who are you talking to?" Ye Wei panicked, "No, no one." The way she carefully concealed it was irritating Yezikin. Originally, I planned to say a few more words, but Mr. Chiao actually walked over by himself and caught the two of them meeting. "This is, that boy from the Ye family." Chiao Laoleng recalled Yezikin's identity for a moment, and his expression suddenly changed. "Chiao Chiao, why are you still with him?" Grandpa, my brother is here to pay homage to Grandma. What brother? His surname is Ye, and you two have sworn hatred. Mr. Chiao has no grudge against the Ye family, but Mrs. Chiao cares about what Mrs. Chiao thinks and seems to feel the same. Ye Wei sighed helplessly. She was about to explain to Yezikin, but Mr. Chiao directly let her pass. Chiao, come here quickly. But I still have something to say. Have you forgotten what your grandma said before she died? Mr. Chiao always felt sad when he mentioned that matter, but Ye was the only one who couldn't argue. She could only say goodbye to Yezikin. You go first. When his back was turned to Mr. Chiao, Ye kept winking at Yezikin. But the person seemed not to be seen. Brother, you go first. You want me to leave? Ye who would have known that just one word would make her heart feel as painful as a knife. You come with me. Yezikin stretched out a hand towards her. Meaning that if Ye Wei is willing to follow him, then step forward and hold his hand. Ye Wei never expected that Yezikin would go against Mr. Chiao to people at this time. It doesn't matter if she leaves, or if she doesn't leave, neither party can be persuaded, and neither party can afford to offend. Grandpa, although my brother is also from the Ye family, he is very good to me. The grudges of the previous generation have nothing to do with him. Ye Wei tried to get Mr. Chiao to accept Yezikin. But Mr. Chiao rejects anyone from the Ye family. Mr. Chiao told Yezikin to get lost, but Yezikin turned a blind eye. Ye Yuyi stood in the middle, one asked her to stay and the other asked her to leave. Why are you forcing me? His soft temper suddenly broke out, and Mr. Chiao was startled. He is the son of Ye Hantian. He is the son of the enemy who killed your father. Chiao, if you want to be with him, how will this bring peace to your relatives who are under the influence of Jiquan? Your grandma's body is still cold, so you have to disobey her. Willing. Thinking of what he had to agree to in front of the hospital bed, Ye Wei's mind was in a mess. Ye Wei raised his head and looked helplessly at Yezikin. The man's eyes stayed on her for dozens of seconds. In the end, he only said one word, okay. Think of a very popular story. Two mothers are fighting for a child, and each mother holds the child's hand. In the end, the biological mother lets go first. Because she heard her child crying out in pain, she felt heartbroken. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. My green plums are super sweet. Author, Lukixi. Chapter 506. Chapter 506 Midnight Tryst. Yezikin left. Yayoi stayed there, but locked himself in the room. If she didn't agree when Grandma was critically ill, would she let Grandma die with hatred? What if you give up Yezikin? That's even more impossible. She will definitely find an opportunity to convince her grandfather and find a way to get the best of both worlds. Dong dong dong. Chiao, you have been in the room for 3 hours. The soundproofing effect of this door in the countryside is not good. Mr. Chiao was knocking on the door and talking outside, but Ye Wei could hear him clearly. She took a deep breath, walked over, opened the door, and called out obediently, Grandpa. I'm sorry, Grandpa sounded a little harsh before, but Chiao, you need to know that Grandpa is not trying to hurt you. Mr. Chiao is not a very strict person. He is very open-minded in his dealings with others, except for people from the Ye family. Old Chiao, an elder, took the initiative to apologize, which Ye Wei didn't expect. Actually, Mr. Chiao didn't feel sorry for her, he just stood in a different position. Ye Wei shook his head, Grandpa, don't say that. She understands everything, but she just can't end the relationship with Yezikin. Chiao, Grandpa is not the kind of authoritarian and overbearing person you are. My granddaughter. Grandpa will try his best to support you in whatever you want to do, except for the Ye family. I really don't know how close you are to that boy Yezikin, but your grandma's words before she died must not be violated. Mr. Chiao has an extremely tough attitude towards the Ye family. Ye only had trouble saying anything, so she just nodded in obedience to his wishes. The elderly cannot eat chicken, especially at this critical point. She believes that after a while, everyone will get over the shadow of grandma's death and all problems will be solved. During dinner, Ye Weiwei saw Li Mo at the dining table. The two of them had been fighting for a while, but now Ye Weiwei just wanted to ignore her. The dinner ended in silence, and Ye Weiwei returned to his room. It's winter now, and it didn't snow in City S today. She opened the window slightly to get some air, and when she pushed the window open, she unexpectedly saw two lanterns erected beside her window. Lanterns with warm colors. Ye Yuyi opened her mouth slightly in shock and touched her lips with her fingers. The scene in front of her seemed to change into the luminous ball she saw outside the window of her new home after she moved out of Ye's home, lighting up the dark night until it seemed like day. How come? Elder brother. Ye Weiwei opened the door and ran out. She walked around in a circle, from the door to the back, where facing her window were two brackets held up by bamboo poles, with warm-colored lanterns hung on them. Brother Chen. The countryside was too quiet and she didn't dare shout too loudly. Ye Weiwei looked around and suddenly bumped into someone. She raised her head happily, the smile on her face frozen. Pei, Assistant Pei. Miss, the night wind is very cold, please pay attention to your health. Oh, thank you. Who are these two lanterns? It's not as convenient as in the city, it's dark outside, so I specially put two lanterns in front of Mrs. window for lighting. Ye Weiwei looked up at the lantern. There was a thin line along the bamboo pole, and the light bulbs were also installed to generate electricity and light. It turned out to be Pei Yuchen. Ye Weiwei sighed. I'm sorry to trouble you, Assistant Pei, please go back and rest early. Pei Yuchen nodded and passed her. The only person standing under the light at night looks lonely. Standing here and blowing the cool breeze, are you trying to make me feel distressed? Alas, writing the story on Kixi Festival makes me feel desolate in my heart. If someone treats me like that, I really will. I must have saved the galaxy. End of this chapter. My green plums are super sweet. Author, Lu Kixi. Chapter 507. Chapter 507, Taking Off the Ring. She stood in the cold night wind, her exposed hands trembling, and her ears turned red from the cold. Hearing the approaching footsteps behind him, Ye Weiwei suddenly did not dare to look back. I knew I had an extra cloak on me, and even my frozen hands were being held by someone. The familiar aura revealed the identity of the visitor, and Ye Weiwei did not resist at all. The man held her hand warmly in his palm, and the warmth conveyed by the sword in both hands was very hot. Ye Weiwei kept her head down, not daring to look at him. I thought you were gone. I'm not as cruel as you. His words clearly revealed his dissatisfaction with her. Ye Weiwei lowered his head and apologized softly, I'm sorry. Yezikin cast his eyes on her profile and warned in a deep voice, my tolerance has limits. He was able to give in this time just because he couldn't bear to embarrass his beloved girl, but that didn't mean that he had to make compromises again and again for people who didn't matter. The gentle big palms wrapped around the cold little hands, and the fingers were smooth. Yezikin frowned, where's your ring? That. Ye Weiwei sighed heavily, because of recent events, I took it off. A ring on her hand is too bright for a newly grown woman. If she is seen by Mr. Chiao and others, she doesn't know what to say, so she might as well put it away herself. Rubbing it between her smooth fingers, Yezikin's tone sounded a bit gritty, you are right, I will compromise with you again and again, right? Ye Weiwei suddenly broke away from his hand, stretched out her arms to hook his neck, stood on tiptoes and tried to raise her head, just enough to kiss his cool lips. Both were silent. Lips touching. The next moment, Yezikin turned his head and kissed her, taking in the sweetness in her lips and teeth. Lemur stood at the corner of the house, watching the scene with a sneer. She immediately turned around and went back to find Mr. Chiao. "Grandpa, there are lights outside." "Oh, Yi Chen is worried that you little girls are not used to this place and are afraid of the dark, so he specially found 2 lights and placed them outside." "No, I thought I saw Chiao Chiao going out just now. It's so cold at night." "I don't know what she was going to do." Lemur printed the topic with a worried tone. Mr. Chiao couldn't sit still when he heard this. "Why is this kid running out now? It's not as cold here as in the city. It's very cold at night." Mr. Chiao stood up and walked out. Lemur picked up a coat at the door and handed it over. "Grandpa, it's very cold outside, please wear an extra layer." Because of the incident with Mrs. Chiao, Mr. Chiao also had a good impression of Lemur. Seeing that she was so attentive and considerate, he became even closer. "Moer is interested. This is what Moer should do." Lemur walked behind Mr. Chiao, guiding him intentionally or unintentionally. Lemur could have taken it easy when he came before, but Ye Wei and Yezikin had no time to take care of it at that time. At this moment, Mr. Chiao naturally made some movement when he was approaching. Yezikin was keenly aware of it, and gently stroked Ye Wei's long hair that was hanging around her shoulders, and placed a gentle kiss on her eyebrows. "I can't wait long." Old man Chiao walked slower as he got older. When he and Lemur came around, they saw Ye Wei standing alone under the lantern. Lemur looked around. Lao Chiao shouted, "Chiao Chiao." Ye Wei turned around with his hands clasped together. Lemur suddenly pointed at her and asked, "Hey, where did this cloak come from?" End of this chapter. My green plums are super sweet. Author, Lukixi. Chapter 508. Chapter 508, Catch the Traitor and Commit Crime. Ye Wei tightened his cloak. Lemur actually reached out and pulled it. "I've never seen this cloak before. It's silver gray. It's not yours, right?" The color and size of this cloak completely covered Ye Wei's slender figure, almost reaching her ankles. Anyone with a discerning eye could tell that it was not hers. And how did she get it in this place? Lemur's action of pulling on the cloak seemed casual, but in fact she used force. Ye Wei opened her hand directly. "Don't touch me." Ye Wei used to act with Lemur, but now she is tired of the feeling of wearing a mask. But just because she was bored, it didn't mean that Lemur would be bored. Lemur was slapped by her and turned around a lot, as if someone else had used a lot of strength. "Chiao Chiao, I just care about you. It's not safe for you to go out alone so late. I don't need you." Before he could say the 3 words of fake kindness, Ye Wei swallowed the rest of his words. Because she caught a glimpse of Mr. Chiao's unhappy expression. Perhaps it's because of the cloak she's wearing. Ye Wei glanced at Lemur. "Since you have to pretend and act, right? She can accompany you." She suppressed the nausea in her heart and could still smile at Lemur. "Moer, you don't need to worry so much. I just feel that the room is too stuffy and I just wanted to come out for some air." Ye Wei turned to face Mr. Chiao again and walked over to help him. "Grandpa, why are you out? It's cold and dewy outside. Go back." Since Mr. Chiao didn't say much, he directly cooperated with Ye Wei. Lemur walked at the end and glared angrily at Ye Wei's back several times. "I thought to myself, this old man didn't even ask, and we still expect him to come out and catch the rapist. Is this the result? It's so boring." Lemur's real goal was not achieved, and he felt unwilling to do so. However, she thought that as long as Ye Wei stayed here, Yezikin would be reluctant to leave, and he must be nearby. Yezikin and Ye Wei are still meeting secretly, and sooner or later they will be caught by Mr. Chiao. It seems that she still needs to work hard to force Mr. Chiao to completely break up Ye Wei and Yezikin. Just walking back to the front from the back, Lee Moore, who had a vicious mind, already had a lot of tricks, all based on calculations. Lee Moore hid in her room and called Madame Ye. Mrs. Ye has been dissatisfied with her recently, just because of Mrs. Jiao's incident. She didn't dare to tell others the truth about falling from the building, so she had to use the emotional card to hide her purpose, so Mrs. Ye was a little repelled by her. But Mrs. Ye has not interfered much in other matters in the past 2 years. Her thoughts are on winning back her husband's heart and keeping an eye on her son's achievements. She also turns a blind eye to Lee Moore. To put it bluntly, she doesn't care what happens to Lee Moore. Practice yourself. But this does not affect Lee Moore and Mrs. Ye's complaint. Mama Ye, brother Chen has been here for a few days, but Mr. Chiao is very dissatisfied with his brother. He insults him when he sees him, and even slanders the Ye family in various ways. Originally, I advised brother Chen to leave, but Jiao Li insisted on keeping brother Chen. Mother Ye, you also know that brother Chen regards that girl Jiao Lian as his sister, but this sincerity is always exploited by people with intentions. Moore really can't stand it anymore. Finally, Lee Moore could leave his address. Mama Ye, why don't you personally persuade brother Chen? We are in village. End of this chapter. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. My green plums are super sweet. Author, Lu Kixi. Chapter 509. Chapter 509. Her son. In this small village, several luxury cars drove in one after another. Mrs. Ye is wearing a mink coat, and the sparkling pearls around her neck are dazzling. In short, she is a model of a noble lady. Go find someone. She ordered the driver to find Ye's highway where they lived. After Lee Moore called Madame Ye and made a half-truth complaint, Madame Ye called her son to urge him to come back. But Yezikin has his own decision to do things, and will not be interfered by others, so he refuses to come back. Mrs. Ye valued her son very much, so she couldn't let him stay here and suffer, so she drove here early in the morning. For people who are used to seeing the bustling cities, the feeling of land full of trees in the countryside is eye-catching. But this Yuliang has a different view. Some people feel that the vision in front of them suddenly opens up, but some people feel that everything around them is simply desolate. In the beginning, there were cement and gravel on the road in the countryside, but when it got closer to the farmhouse, the road turned to dirt. Mrs. Ye was wearing those 7-centimeter stiletto heels, and it was difficult to walk even an inch when stepping on those potholes. What a broken place! Mrs. Ye shook her hands angrily, returned to the car, and asked others to go down to look for her. She called Lee Moore again. Lee Moore received a call from Madame Ye and rushed over without stopping. Mrs. Ye is definitely not used to coming here. If she feels disgusted with this place, she will force Yezikin to leave. If Yezikin refuses, Madame Ye will not be willing to scold her biological son. When the time comes, she will take advantage of the situation and lead all the trouble to Ye. Mama Ye, you are finally here. Lee Moore started wiping tears when she was sad. Mrs. Ye glanced at her with disgust, sat there arrogantly, and asked, "Where is Chenur? Where is Yezikin?" Of course Lee Moore doesn't know. Lee Moore was stunned for a moment, then shook his head tearfully. "I don't know, Mr. Chiao didn't allow brother Chen to get close, but Jiao Ling insisted that he stay, so he had to hide in this village, and neither of us know where he is. I just feel that it's really inappropriate for a proud man like brother Chen to stay in this small and shabby place and suffer." Mrs. Ye was already dissatisfied with the surname Jiao. Now he is even more angry. This is so outrageous. But none of the people she sent out found Yezikin. Mrs. Ye directly ordered Lee Moore to bring Ye Wei. Lee Moore frowned when he heard this. "Well, I can't call her. Mother Ye, You don't know how arrogant Jiao Ling is now. After her grandmother died, she left her property to her, and then she recognized I have a grandpa, and now I treat myself like a rich lady, and talk to me sarcastically. Okay, I still know the crookedness in your heart. There's no need to tell me this deliberately. Just find the person for me, and I won't bother with you about other things. Mrs. Ye is not stupid and knows that Li Moer's words are completely false. But it is a fact that Yezikin stayed here and suffered for Ye only. Li Moer walked back reluctantly and said directly to Ye Wei, Mama Ye wants to see you. Ye Wei frowned, why is she here? Of course I'm here to find my son. How selfish of you to leave brother Chen here. I didn't keep him. If you have any questions, you can explain it to Mother Ye yourself. Ye Wei is not afraid of Mrs. yet. She went out on the front foot, and Li Moer informed Mr. Chiao from behind. End of this chapter. My green plums are super sweet. Author, Lu Kixi. Chapter 510. Chapter 510. Don't marry unless you are a king. Long time no see, Madame Ye is still the same noble and aloof person. But the night has changed. Her figure is graceful, and the elegant charm between her eyebrows and eyes is completely natural. Her walking style is like a person walking out of a painting. Even Madame Ye, who had a critical eye, was amazed, but Madame Ye stared closely at her eyebrows, and the displeasure appeared on her face again. So similar. Yes, only eyes were so similar to those of her biological mother. Every time she saw them, it reminded Madame Ye of the woman she could never defeat in her life, Hua Qinhui. Yezi followed the direction pointed by Li Moer. There was a road here and the car was obvious, so she found it quickly. But she walked to the car at a leisurely pace, stopped a meter away, and politely called out, Mrs. Ye. Madame Ye put away her jealous expression and raised her head arrogantly, you dare to come? Since I haven't done anything wrong, why don't I dare to come? She does things with a clear conscience, and of course there is no need to hide. Huh, Madame Ye sneered, you said you didn't do anything wrong, but you think it's natural to leave my son here to suffer, right? First, brother Chen didn't suffer here. Second, I didn't take it for granted. Hua Qinhui can seduce people, you really have inherited it from your mother. Mrs. Ye scolded her mother mercilessly. Ye Wei clenched her fists. During the few seconds of hesitation, her mentality changed drastically. Compromising and showing weakness will only be stepped on by Madame Ye. She will never tolerate others insulting her dead mother. She looked directly at Madame Ye, with a slight smile on her face. I think you misunderstood, I did not force him to stay. The implication is that Yezikin stayed here voluntarily. This was said as if her excellent son was still being treated upside down. By Ye forcing him to stay is unacceptable. Chiao Li, I don't want to talk nonsense to you. Where is my son? Ask him to come see me. If brother Chen wants to see you, he will come naturally, but if he doesn't want to show up, I don't know. She really didn't know where Yezikin was, that was the truth. Mrs. Ye was angry after hearing this, and saw that Ye Wei was still smiling, as if he was provoking. If Madame Ye is willing to come down, I can take you to look for her. Ye Wei lowered his eyes, his gaze resting on the 7-centimeter stiletto heels on Madame Ye's feet, which had a special meaning. Madame Ye got off the car directly and pointed her finger at Ye Wei to warn, Chiao Li, I tell you, don't be arrogant. I know you like my son, but as long as I am here, you will never enter my Ye family in your life. As soon as Madame Ye finished speaking, before Ye Wei could retort, Mr. Chiao had already rushed over. My granddaughter doesn't care about people from your Ye family. The old man's voice was like a bell, full of momentum. Grandfather. The two of them were not expecting Mr. Chiao's arrival. Mrs. Ye was still arrogant and did not give face to the old man. Hey, someone is backing me now. Huh, Madame Ye sneered, you said this yourself. Don't cry and beg to be with my son when the time comes. otherwise you will be really embarrassed. Not to be outdone, Mr. Chiao said, it's your son who insists on staying here to pester my granddaughter. If you have the leisure, then take care of your son. My son will never marry Chiao Lian. My granddaughter will never marry Yezikan. The hearts of brother Chen and Xiao Lingdang. End of this chapter.